To start today's mobility video, I'm going to have you start on your hands and knees. You want your knees right under your hips, and you're just going to start by flexing the spine a little bit, cat, camel. And then you're going to take one arm and thread it through. So you want one shoulder down on the floor, the arm extended out under your other arm, and the other arm is sort of just holding its frame, almost pushing that floor away a little bit. You want to make sure that your knees stay under your hips and that your hips stay square. Try not to twist through that lower body. So you want to maintain your frame through your hips, and you want to sort of rotate that rib cage around a little bit. Focusing on the shoulder blades, so keeping that top shoulder strong and that bottom shoulder is being stretched out. And you'll probably feel this in your rib cage too, and also your T-spine. When you come out of that stretch or that side, you're just going to do another quick spine flexibility, so just up and down, cat, camel, and then thread through to the other side. So keeping that nice frame on the top arm and really extending that bottom arm down. You want to make sure that your head is comfortable on the floor, and just check in with your hips and make sure that they're square. Knees are under the hips, and you're really focusing on your range of motion just through your rib cage. Couple of deep breaths, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. Taking your time here. Our next stretch is a Frogger gradual stretch. So you're going to stay on your knees, push the knees out as far as they can go, keeping the toes sort of pointed toward each other as much as possible. You're going to put the hands on the floor in front of you and just sort of rock back and forth, feeling for that stretch through the groin and the inner thigh. Here I'm kind of pushing that floor away a little bit, really sitting in nice and deep. You want to make sure that you keep your back straight and that you're not just rounding over. And just take your time. You can either rock back and forth or you can just sit into the stretch, whichever one you feel like will serve you best. We're going into a deep squat after this one, so you want to make sure that you're really taking your time and opening up that hip. Okay, so now standing at the end of your mat, the feet should be just outside hip width, and you are going to do a half lift, and then you're going to bring your hips all the way down into a deep squat. Extend the hips up and come back up to a half lift. Drop it down, lifting your shoulders up, then hands on the floor, dropping the hips down. Every time you drop the hips down, you want to think about pushing the knees apart so that you're really working through the hips, getting those ankles in position so the toes are forward, knees are out, and just taking your time. You want to exhale as you're coming down. Inhale on that half lift. Hands down, exhale and drop. We're going to sit into a deep squat a little bit here. So making sure that you get into that squat in a semi-comfortable position. And now we're going to alternate our T-spine. So raising one arm up toward the ceiling and one arm down toward the floor. You're almost pushing that knee away as you extend through the shoulders. I understand this is going to be really challenging for some people, so just do the best that you can. If you need to keep your hips up while you do your T-spine rotation, like you've seen in the other videos, you can do that as well. This one is a little more advanced. Just taking your time, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. Now we get to go down into child's pose. Who doesn't love child's pose? And really stretching out through the shoulders. We're going to go child's pose to spider lunge. So driving one foot forward and then going back into plank, down into child's pose, into plank, spider lunge the other side, plank, child's pose. So really shifting forward, nailing that plank every time. Getting that foot right beside your hand on the spider lunge and driving through the hip. So really opening up one hip at a time here. Keeping the shoulders nice and strong. Make the most of that child's pose as well. If you are more comfortable with your knees apart, you can certainly do that. A lot of times you'll get more range that way. So just taking your time, nice strong plank, reach into the child's pose, plank and spider lunge. A couple more here. We have an interesting move with a 90-90 after this one. So make the most of this, really getting that full range, strong plank. All right, so now we're going to get into our 90-90, which we've done in the previous video. So the front leg in 90 position, back leg in 90 position, but we're going to have you lift your hips off the floor. So this is a very awkward move at first. You're going to squeeze your glutes, lift the hip off the floor. You're almost driving that front knee into the floor a little bit. So whatever angle you need for that front leg, do what you have to do. If this is a little too much for you, please just hold that 90-90 stretch. So just holding it, leaning forward. You want to make sure your hips are on the floor and that your back is straight if you're leaning over that leg. Or you can try this one. This is really awesome for firing up the glutes. And the more you fire up the glutes, the more you open up the front of the hip. So now we're going to switch sides. So your other leg is 90 in front, and the leg that was just in front is in back. You're going to squeeze the glutes, lift everything up, big squeeze at the top, keeping those legs bent. Feel free to grab your butt. Sometimes it's nice to feel what's working. If you start to feel any discomfort in your knee, again, just go back to the standard 90-90. We're going to take a break from the hips after this one, and we'll work on some upper body, some T-spine stuff. So big squeeze, keep breathing. All right. So now you're going to lie on your stomach. We're going to work on our long swim. We're actually going to go one side at a time. So we're going to do an alternating long swim, keeping the non-moving arm extended up and off the floor while the other one swims around. And just take your time. Make sure you're breathing. Relax your lower body so your toes should be on the floor. Your glutes should be as relaxed as possible. You want to reach up and around, get those arms as long as you possibly can. Big reach around, reach. And now we're going to go double. So both arms are going to come up off the floor, and you're going to swim around with both arms. You want to think about keeping your cervical spine or your neck pretty neutral, so try not to crank up the chin. You want to just look straight down at the floor. When I'm that close to the floor, I need to close my eyes or it makes my eyes bug out. So feel free to close your eyes and just feel your swim. Again, getting those arms as long as you possibly can. We'll go back to the hips after this one. This is a great way to wake up that T-spine, those shoulder blades, get that upper back fired up. Okay, now I'm gonna have you sit. You're gonna have one leg folded, the other leg extended, and we're gonna do a fold and unfold into a straddle. So unfold to a straddle here, fold and reach to the extended leg, unfold, straddle, fold and reach, unfold, reach, fold and reach. And you're just gonna go at a nice steady pace. Try not to bounce. You want to make sure that you are reaching with control and you're not falling in and you're not throwing yourself into a stretch that might be a little too deep for you. So really controlling every bit of this. You also want to try not to lean back too far when you're folding and unfolding your legs. If you need to slow down, that's better than winging yourself back to swing your leg around. You want to really try to control it. You'll see me grab sort of the inside of my knee when I fold and unfold, and that just helps me control my hip. And you should be feeling your hips get a little more loose and your hamstrings as well. We'll go back to some spider lunges after this one. So setting up in a nice tall plank. One leg is up by your hand, then you're going to extend your hips back. So you're going to sink into the spider lunge and then extend out of it. Sink down, extend out of it. So one foot is right by your hand. The other leg is extended back nice and far. And just keep rocking. Try to get a little bit more of a stretch every time. We always have the part of the stretch that feels good and the part that feels really tight. So really getting acquainted with the areas where you might be a little bit more tight. Notice my front foot is flat on the floor too, so we're getting a little bit of a top foot stretch there as well. Swing into the other side, extending that back leg, so nice deep spider lunge, and then hinging back to come out of the lunge. Taking your time, making sure that your toes are forward, your foot is flat on the floor. And it's always good to sort of push the knee out past the foot a little bit, not over the toes, but out laterally. Pushing the floor away, keeping those shoulders nice and strong. Core is engaged. We're going to do a half get up after this, but it's actually going to be at the top part, or middle part, I should say. So you have one leg bent, and that same side arm is up straight toward the ceiling. The other leg is straight, and that straight leg has a corresponding straight arm. You're going to lift the hips up, thread that leg back, extend the leg, and drop the hips. Shoulder stays strong. You're really using your glutes here, opening up that front hip. So bridging up, thread it down. So you want to get that knee right under that hip if you can. So your focus is here on the thread, pulling it way back, then extending it out with control and releasing it down. Press, thread, extend, and release. Press up and thread, extend, and release. We're going to switch sides. So here it's my left arm is on the floor, my left hand on the floor, left leg is extended, right arm is up toward the ceiling, and right leg is bent. Good. So coming down, You're going to lift, thread through, extend, and drop. So even when you're extending back, you're threading here, extend, and down. When you're releasing that leg, you need to think about lifting the hips and making room for that knee to shift forward. Lift, thread, extend, and drop. Keeping that shoulder nice and strong. Core is active. This will make you break a sweat. Nice. All right, the hardest part is over. We are going to go into an inchworm. So walking out into a nice tall plank, and then you're going to walk the hands back and you're going to sink it down into a deep squat, pushing those knees out, keeping the toes forward. Then hips come up, walk out to that tall plank. You want to kind of pointer it a little bit, so when you're in that plank, shifting the shoulders further than your fingertips, and then walking back and dropping into a deep squat. Controlling that inchworm plank so that you are not shifting your hips side to side. You want to make sure that your core is engaged, you are in control. With every step, you're pushing that floor away. Dropping it down into a nice deep squat. Hands down, butt up. Walk it out. Pointer. Walk it back. Elbows in, drop it down. Still breathing. You might have broken a little bit of a sweat by this point. Good. We're almost done here. Elbows in and dropping down. Butt up and walk it out. Now we're going to do just a simple fold to the right and then to the left and then a roll up. And now taking your time from the center, rolling up, big reach up, fold forward, shift to the left, shift to the right, center, roll it up, reaching up, folding forward, left, right, center, and roll up. You're just going to keep going like this. As you are shifting, pay attention to what's happening in your ankles. When you roll up, keep that core pulled in nice and tight, really reaching the rib cage up super tall. Keep the core in tight as you roll. And go at your own pace here, whatever you might feel. If you want to get in a couple more swings to the left and right, you can do that as well. Big reach up. Now we're going into a pretty standard psoas stretch or hip flexor stretch. So just reaching up nice and tall. We're going to alternate sides here, which might throw your balance off a little bit. I know I lose my balance a couple of times. Just think about driving the hip forward and reaching the arms up. Don't think so much about arching that back. So it's not so much about the curve of your spine as it is about the drive of the hip. So reaching the arms up just allows your core to also stretch. It's not about the bend, but it's about the extension. Knee forward, driving those hips. Taking your time. Now we're just going to add a little bit of a twist. So when that knee comes forward, the hand comes down, and you're twisting toward your knee. Continue to alternate, keeping the hips up nice and tall, so your core needs to stay really active just to alternate those legs. One hand comes down. We have just a few more here. We're ending here in a child's pose. Knees are really, really wide, sinking down nice and deep into the hips, reaching to one side with the arms, reaching to the other side, back to center. Going into a nice active Cobra here, opening up the front body. Back into child's pose. And you are good. Nicely done.